Welcome to Literary Libations with Librarians, and this time we are springing into adventure. We're going to share titles with you that make us think about having adventures, or that are adventurous or have adventurous characters in them. As we share them, if you'd like to get your hands on any of them, there's several ways to go about doing so. The first is to contact your local branch of the Monroe County Library System and speak to the staff there, and they'll be more than happy to assist you. If you'd like to request your own through our online catalog, that web address is on our screen now, and that'll give you access to physical versions of the titles. Some of the titles will be available via one of our 2 digital apps. Overdrive is sort of rebranding into Libby, so we're going to be moving over to just calling Overdrive Libby. We're in the process of doing that, but Libby is an app. You can go to your app store and download it, and it has downloadable ebooks, audiobooks, and also magazines. And also Libby now includes movies via Canopy. And Hoopla is another platform, and Hoopla provides downloadable ebooks, audiobooks, movies, music, and graphic novels. And the great thing with Hoopla is if you see the lightning bolt next to a title, which is almost all of the titles that are on there, then you can automatically download that title. There's never a wait with those ones. I am Jennifer Grenosky, and I am the community librarian at the Dundee Branch Library. And to kick us off and introduce ourselves this week, we are going to share something adventurous that we have done in our lives. And apart from, the adventure of being married and having a child, which if you've done that, that's an adventure and it's new and different every single day. Before all that, when I was younger and more adventurous, I had the opportunity to spend the summer on a kibbutz in Israel. And I feel like that's one of the most adventurous things I've ever done. So you go over as a volunteer, you work on the kibbutz. I worked in the kitchens. The kibbutz I was on had a date farm. It had an ostrich breeding facility. It was literally right on the Sea of Galilee. It was amazing. And I was also able to visit Jerusalem and climb Masada and saw the Dead Sea at sunrise. So it was an amazing summer. So that was my adventure. So, if you're young, go out, have those adventures when you can, because you get into different sort of adventures in different phases of your life. So that was amazing. Mine. Pardon?
That sounds amazing.
It really was. It was pretty incredible. And I've always been interested in Middle Eastern history and that convergence of the 3 monotheistic religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. So it's a fascinating place to be, and it was a great summer. So there's mine. Also with us this week is Kristen Brown, a reference librarian at the Bedford branch. And what adventure do you want to share with us, Kristen?
That's really hard to follow. File to think of one. And I guess I was just kind of sticking with the lane of physically going on adventures. There's probably, like you said, starting a family, doing things with your career. That is absolutely adventurous. As far as going to a destination, I think the most adventurous thing would probably be, actually, I'm going to switch things up because this just popped in my head. It would probably actually be recently. I took a weekend vacation by myself on the west side of the state, and I had realized that I had never gone anywhere by myself before I got married and had kids. I always went on groups and did things. And so I took some time and got an Airbnb and went on some trails and did some researching and went to these really cool places. And it was just a couple of days, but it felt really nice to just be by myself. But it was adventurous because I'm not used to doing things by myself. So I really had to figure out, where am I going? What do I want to do? How am I going to get here? Those kinds of things. So that was pretty adventurous for me.
That sounds amazing.
It does sound amazing.
As a deep introvert, time by myself is always appreciated. And traveling alone is an adventure because it is very different because you don't have to worry about, okay, I got to make sure this is taken care of. And, you know, like, okay, and this is what we're going to, like, I tend to plan a lot more when it's like everybody. If it's me, I'm like, I'll figure it out.
But yeah, it was very like the driving. I got a little adventurous on the way there, and I didn't take like the expressway. And so I was like, I'm going to take some back roads and see how it goes. And it was beautiful. But the whole time my brain was like, you've never done this before. This is a big deal.
That's awesome. Thank you, Kristen. Also with us this week is Jen McCarty, who is our newly installed circulation manager at our Ellis branch. So congratulations to Jen. And so she'll be starting a new adventure here shortly. And what adventure would you like to share with us today?
This was also hard for me because I'm not particularly adventurous, but your story actually reminded me of something crazy that I did back in my youth. When I was in college, I had an advanced composition class. And one of the things that we had to do was, before we began our big research paper, we had to have all these sources. You know, we had to have like 30 primary sources and 50 secondary sources. It was an insane amount of sources. And I decided to write my paper on the Salem witch trials. So kind of spur of the moment, I'm like, I need primary sources. I'm going to Salem. So I convinced, I think there ended up being 4 of us, to convince 3 other friends who were all, you know, we were all like 18, 19, pretty young. Let's just go to Salem for the weekend. It happened to be around Halloween. We got in the car, we drove, this was super internet days, like kind of used the internet to find a hotel, called them up. Do you have room? Okay, cool. We just went and hung out. We visited a couple of museums. I, kind of pretended like I was doing research, and we just had fun. And it was a super random, we were young. We didn't know what the heck we were doing. And it was a blast. We ended up going back 2 more times, the same group, at Halloween, just because it was so much fun. And it was such a, exciting time to go out there at Halloween. And, we dressed up and we explored the history of the local area, but we also just, we're young kids kind of having an adventure, and it was a lot of fun.
Nice. Road trip. Yes.
And now I hear road trip and I'm like, can we fly? Want me to be in a car for like 12 hours on purpose?
Yeah. Yep. I actually even told my husband that, because we went away over spring break and drove, and literally it's like a 4-hour drive. This is not a long drive. And I looked at him. I don't like road trips. Even like 4 hours, I'm like, I don't know. I just feel gross. Like I'm like, no, 4 hours, that's too long. I just can't do this anymore. All right. Also with us this week is Jessica Otto, our head of collections here at the Monroe County Library System. And describe your adventure for us, Jessica.
The most adventurous thing that I can think of that I've done is in 2011, I went prospecting for diamonds in Arkansas, which is something I, to that point, would have never seen myself doing. My husband was watching a show on the Travel Channel one day, talking about different places you can go in the United States to sort of do hands-on things involving gems, minerals, and diamonds. And he heard about this place in Arkansas called the Crater of Diamonds State Park, and he was just enthralled with it. And he was like, "We're going." I was like, okay. So we decided to go. We made it a trip for our 2nd wedding anniversary that year. Didn't know how I was going to like it, and it turned out I absolutely loved it. So basically, you go to the state park. You can bring in all your own equipment for like looking through. They have this gigantic field, and basically you just go out into this field and you have your bucket and you get your dirt. You take it over to the sluice, I believe that's how you say it. I learned how to use that, how to wash like through to find like the gems and the minerals, learned how to like try to cut into some of them to see if it was a diamond. or not. I just loved it. I loved it for anything that gives me a physical challenge is like I love. And so it was very physically demanding. Plus, I'm probably in the minority on this, but I love heat and humidity. And we went in August, and so it was about 110 with like 100% humidity. And it was just, I was just in my glory. I was just like, it was wonderful. Other people there were not so thrilled with that kind of heat and humidity, but I loved it. We did not find any diamonds, but we got to keep some cool looking gemstones that we brought home and put in the base of our little bamboo plant at home. So yeah, it was very exciting. I would absolutely go back and go again and maybe find some diamonds the next time.
Excellent. Thanks, Jess. That's so unique. It's amazing the things that you can do around our state and around our country. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
And now we're going to get into our adventurous titles. And I think I will ask Kristen to go ahead and kick us off.
Okay, so my two titles are pretty different. One is a fiction novel that I just finished recently, and the other one is a nonfiction book. So I think I'm starting with my fiction title, which is called The Book of Magic by Alice Hoffman. And I have talked about this series before. This is actually the last book in the series. And so I would suggest that you read the two prior to this that she released in order to get a full idea, since this is wrapping up everything. So if you read Practical Magic, that's a great start, but you're going to want to read the two that go before it. I absolutely enjoyed this book, and I have to say, for an ending for a book series, I felt like she did a great job wrapping this up. I felt content. I felt like she did a great job. I didn't feel like, oh, you left some stuff out, or I felt like you could have finished this a little stronger. And I chose this for an adventurous title because the family, so you have Franny and you have Jet, and they are like the matriarchal aunts. And so if you've read Practical Magic, or if you watch the movie, you know who they are. Then you have Sally, who Sally doesn't do magic anymore. And I'm gonna stop myself right here because I can go off on a tangent and explain all of this, and I feel like it will get very confusing. So I'm actually going to choose today to read the synopsis that is available because I feel like it really sums it up what the book is about, and then I'll add some stuff in. So the Owens family is the main family in this book, and they have been cursed in love for over 300 years now. And this book is where it's all about to change. So a frantic attempt to save a young man's life spurs 3 generations of Owens women and one long-lost brother to use their unusual gifts to break the curse as they travel from Paris to London to the English countryside, where their ancestor, Maria Owens, first practiced the unnamed art. The younger generation discovers secrets that have been hidden from them in matters of both magic and love by Sally, the fiercely protective mother. So as Kylie, who is Sally's daughter, as Kylie Owens uncovers the truth about who she is and what her own dark powers are, her Aunt Franny comes to understand that she is ready to sacrifice everything for her family, and Sally Owens realizes that she is ready to give up everything for love. So if you are familiar with the book series, there is the curse on the family. They cannot love. Their spouses, their significant others, all have these untimely deaths. And so she did a great job bringing what is the family, bringing them all together, and then putting them on this journey to go get Kylie. So Kylie wants to save her boyfriend. He was in a horrible accident because the big thing in the family is if you pronounce your love, if you show your love, that's when the curse comes after you. And it's always like this death watch beetle, and you can hear it clicking. And so some of the people have found ways around the curse. So they might not live on the same floor, or they don't get married, or they don't tell each other they love each other. And so Kylie goes to find a way to break the curse. She ends up finding her aunt's grimoire, which is like her spell book. And so she goes over in order to get rid of the curse, she has to go over to where the curse first began, which is in Essex County, the original in England. And so the family goes over there to get Kylie, and Kylie is teetering on the edge of darkness. And so it was just a really great book. I love Alice Hoffman's style. She does a great job of being very flowy. And so without jammering on too much about it, it was a really great book. I highly recommend. And like I said, you might want to read the other ones before you read this one, but it's a great series. Absolutely loved it. Great way to wrap it up. And then for my next one, it's Let's Play Outdoors. And that's because one of my goals for my husband and I this year is to really get our kids out. We really want to do some things, you know, with the pandemic. I feel like generally people kind of got into this, but we bought a camper and we renovated a camper. And so we're like, yeah, this summer we're going to go on road trips. We're going to do all these fun things. Hopefully that is the way it pans out. Most people I talk to say you buy a camper and you don't really use it as much as you think you would. So we're really trying to gear up and just get some ideas together for our adventures in order to still have it be fun also for our kids. And so this book was really great because it has all these little things that you can do to explore in the woods. So you can make an obstacle course with the things that are around the area. You can be nature detectives, which I thought was super awesome. And I strongly feel that as adults, sometimes we read this and go, my kids aren't going to do this, but I guarantee you your kids will. So it might not be something that you are interested in, but if you are looking into these things in order to do with your kids, or they will follow in those steps. Like they are naturally curious about things like this. The using a map one I thought was really cool, and I will probably try this one with my kids, but you can draw your own map, which I thought really ties in with the curriculum of lower elementary, because it's about like their immediate areas and then their communities, and then, you know, like it gets wider. So creating their own map of the areas around them is such a great idea. So there's so many things you can do: pine cone feeders, ID trees, count tree rings, campfire stories. So this is a great book if you are looking to start an adventure and maybe just need some ideas on how to keep it motivated and keep it going.
I was surprised during the pandemic because I'm not an outdoor person. So during the pandemic, but I told Tony when we were like all home alone, I said, we have to get outdoors every day. I said, I don't even care unless it's like pouring and windy rain, we have to get outdoors. And so some days it was just like, we're just going to go read on the porch. Mm-hmm. And then one day I was like, well, let's do like a scavenger hunt. And he got so into it because he was old enough that I was like, well, why don't you come up with the things that we have to find? Mm-hmm. And whichever one of us finds them fastest or finds the most, then I don't remember what I said, like you could have. It was like, you can have a sugary cereal for breakfast or something. Like, I don't remember what it was. It was something little, but he got totally into it. He came back and he's like, here's my list of things we got to find, you know, and then you start looking at it and you're like, dude, I don't think we're going to find, like in our area, like there's some things where I'm like, I don't think we're going to find that, but who knows? At least it got us outside and we had fun doing it. We did a color scavenger hunt to find all the colors of the rainbow one time. So like it's, you know, and now I feel sad because now I'm like, oh, we don't do that now. Like school's back, work's back. Like, so
that's kind of how we
you made me think like we need to do that again. Even if like in my head, I'm like, I don't want to do that. You know, I want to just read my book. It's like, no, it was great when we did. So thank you, Kristen.
Same boat. Yep.
And let's have Jessica share her titles next.
Okay, so my first title is Congo by Michael Creighton. So this novel starts out in 1979. The Houston-based Earth Resources Technology Services has sent an expedition of geologists into the Congo region of Central Africa. Now they are there searching for diamonds, but not just any diamonds. They are looking for a very specific type of diamond with special electrical properties that would make it useful as a superconductor in various technological applications. So as when they're looking for these diamonds, this expedition, they travel further and further into the rainforest. And then one day, their guides, which are mostly a group of local men, say that they can't go any further. They refuse to go any further into the rainforest because they say that if they go any further, they're going to be going into a place called the Place of Bones, where legend says men that go into that area will have their skulls crushed or broken bones. And so they won't go any further. Now, the lead guide, his name is Jan Kruger. He doesn't really believe that this is a legend. He thinks that they're just saying this because they want to try to get some more money, higher wages out of this. And he sort of anticipated that this might happen. So he says, sure, we'll double your wages. So they agree to go in a little further into the rainforest. So later that evening, they set up a camp. They have been, this expedition, they have been in regular contact with their home base back in Houston. Even though it's 1979, they still have the ability to do a little bit of connection through video. And overnight, the expedition gets a request from the home base in Houston to set up a video feed. They want to chat with them and see how things are going. And there is, because of, it's not quite the technology we have today, so any video transmission, and especially because they're in the middle of the rainforest, there is a 6-minute delay on the video feed getting to Houston. So while the video feed is setting up, the guide Jan, he goes to find the geologists and wake them up and get them ready to be on camera. And as he's walking there, he starts to hear the screeching of colobus monkeys in the trees. And at first, he's not necessarily concerned with this. He knows that the colobus monkeys sometimes at night will play fight with each other and results in screeching. And then he feels something hit his chest. And he looks down and he sees a red stain on his shirt. And he looks down and he sees what he thinks is a berry on the ground. And he sort of chuckles to himself and says, oh, the colobus monkeys, they threw a berry at me. How funny of them. And so he looks down, he reaches down to get the berry, but what he picks up in his hand is far more horrifying than a berry, far more horrifying than he could ever have imagined. And he turns around just in time to let out a scream captured on the video feed. So all of this is, so the base in Houston, they can see the sort of the aftermath of what has happened in the camp. At first, they don't see any signs of people. They just sort of assume that it's nighttime in the Congo. They assume maybe everyone's asleep. They're just not woken up yet. But as the camera turns and pans, they realize they see a camp that has been destroyed. They start to see evidence that there may not be any survivors from this expedition. And they're not really sure what has happened, although they see the blurry image of what at first appears to be a man go by the camera, but it turns out that it's anything but. The image comes closer to the camera and the view through the camera drops and turns. And so they realize that whatever this is on the camera has knocked the camera down. And they see a brief glimpse of a large face and a dark hand before the feed cuts out. So then the ERTS, the Earth Resources Technology Group, after they see this, they're able to analyze the video and sort of look at it shot by shot. And they realize that this image that they have seen on a still image is actually what appears to be the face of a male gorilla. And so the technology company, they decide that they need to send in a second expedition to find out what happened to the first expedition, and also to carry on the mission of looking for these diamonds that are very important to the project that they are currently working on. So this new expedition is led by a woman named Karen Ross. They hire a guide named Monroe, who is supposed to be very good at what he does, to lead this expedition into the Congo. And then because of the connection with the gorilla, Karen decides she needs to reach out to somebody who knows something about gorillas, or at least more than she knows about gorillas. And so not only is the company she works for a technology company, they also do have like a fund where they fund research for various parties, different universities and academics. And she reaches out to a primatologist named Peter Elliott who's at UC Berkeley, who is the recipient of one of the grants through this fund. And her intention at first is just to ask him questions about gorillas and get some answers that might help her before she goes into the Congo herself. But it turns out that he is actually himself already planning a trip to the Congo. And so he basically very excitedly invites himself along to her expedition. And he says, but there's one thing, I'm bringing Amy being his gorilla that he works with, that he has taught to speak sign language. And Amy actually can sign 620 words in sign language. Not long after Peter agrees to go on, well, just before, it turns out that he has noticed some behavior changes in Amy, and she seems just really upset and down, and he's not quite sure at first why. And she is eventually able to use her sign language communication to tell Peter that she is having bad dreams. And he tries to communicate with her more through sign language to find out the content of these bad dreams. It doesn't really work, but what he finds does work is finger painting. And she is able to use finger painting to show what it is she is seeing in her dreams. And what she is seeing is memories of her very early years spent in the Congo region of Africa, the exact same place where this expedition, the first expedition, disappeared. And so Peter decides that Amy needs to go back to the Congo. He needs to take her there and figure out what's going on and what can they resolve for her. So Karen and Peter and Amy and Monroe, the guide, they do travel to the Congo. When they get there, they start to unearth some secrets of this supposedly uninhabited area of the Congo rainforest. They discover evidence of a lost city called Zinj that was the basis for some diamond mines, which were very important to the people. And they also discover a connection between Amy, the gorilla, and the supposed guardians of not just the city, but of the diamond mines there in the Congo. But to discover what those secrets are and what that connection is, you will have to read the book. This work by Michael Creighton is, I felt, was the very definition of a page turner, told by one of the master storytellers of the 20th century. This work was originally published in 1980. It made its way to the New York Times bestseller list pretty quickly, and then was adapted. This novel was adapted into a 1995 film by the same name. This riveting rainforest adventure will keep you captivated from the very first page.
Although, as you were telling the story, in my whole heart, I'm like, no, don't go in there. Don't go in there. Stop. I don't know. Maybe listen to Amy. Clearly, she doesn't want to do this. This is a bad idea. But you know,
I kept seeing expressions, Jennifer, and you would go,
like, no. We all know this is a bad idea. But you know, where would the adventure be if he didn't go?
No. Yeah, I'm over here thinking, go capitalism. Hey, they all died. Let's send in another crew. We need the diamond. Yay.
I know. I was like, I do not want to be a crew.
We didn't get our crate diamond yet.
Well, you know, they just
fine.
Yeah,
no big deal.
Just go. We're giving you a gorilla expert. You're fine now. No gorilla.
Exactly.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Apparently, they didn't teach Amy the correct word, terms for warning. No danger, Will Robinson. Yeah.
Or maybe so just, I don't know, stupid human. Stop.
But as you said, where would the adventure be?
That's right. You wouldn't get to have a great page turner if you didn't didn't go anyways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that was my first work. My second work is a work of nonfiction. It is called The Impossible Voyage of Kon-Tiki by Deborah Cohen Ray. So let me start with talking about, this story is about Thor Heyerdahl. If you're not familiar with Thor Heyerdahl, other than just having a really cool name, he was a Norwegian anthropologist and all-around adventurer. So in his role as an anthropologist, he found himself living on an island in French Polynesia called Fatuhiva. And he became very curious about how did this population, how did these people come to live on this island in the middle of nowhere? Like, they couldn't have just appeared here one day. Where did these people come from? And so he would talk to a lot of the locals about the legends, and everyone would tell him about this legend about how this mythical figure named Tiki brought their ancestors across the sea. And not only did they know the story of Tiki, but everyone had these little like wood carvings of the image of Tiki. And as he spoke to more and more people and looked at these images, he started to realize that there was a great connection between the people on this island and between an ancient civilization in South America, specifically the Incan people of South America. And he wondered if there was a connection between the Polynesian mythical feature named Tiki and the ancient Incan god named Kon-Tiki Viracocha. And now keep in mind that if you're not familiar with the geography of this, French Polynesia is about 4,300 nautical miles, and you can see it here on the map, 4,300 nautical miles from the Incan territories of South America. So there is quite a distance there. But he started to wonder, was it possible for the ancient Incans to have left South America and traveled to Polynesia and have settled on this island? And that's where this population originated. So he, as good academics do, he did all his research, he wrote up some papers, and he started to present all of his ideas to all these different specialists and academics around the world. He even came to the US in hopes that he would find all these people to agree with him and support his theory. And what he found was, over and over, people would just tell him, nah, didn't happen, you're nuts. Not only did they say that, but they said even, it was just impossible for people at the time in the ancient Incan civilization to have even traveled. They didn't have the means to travel 4,300 nautical miles. So after Thor heard this over and over again, he decided that he needed to at least prove that it would have been possible for the ancient Incans to have traveled this great distance to the Polynesian islands. And so he decided the best way to do that was to build an exact replica of an Incan balsa log raft to reenact what would have been the voyage of the Incans from South America to French Polynesia. So he created this craft, which he called Kon-Tiki. It was simply created with 9 balsa logs that were banded together with hemp rope. And the only shelter on the boat was just this tiny little bamboo cabin. The crew, he had 5 crew members with him. They brought very minimal equipment and very minimal food supplies, because the goal was to try to make it as close as possible as to how it would have been for the ancient Incans that would have been traveling this route. And even though he had a crew of 5 other men, I believe he was the only experienced sailor, the only person on board that had actually had any sea traveling experience. So there was a lot of doubt about how this would go, but the craft was built and it set sail from South America on April 2nd of 1947. in search of Polynesia. So on this, which I have been to sea out in the vast ocean many, many times on gigantic large ships. And even on those, I still feel like this tiny little speck of nothing in the middle of the ocean. So for them to set sail on something that is literally 9 logs wide, tiny little cabin, I just can't even imagine this journey. But as they went, they met lots of challenges along the way. They came up to storms. Part of their boat was damaged at some point, or I don't even say boat, it's not even a boat, it's a craft, was damaged at some point, which took away their ability to basically steer the craft, so that at some point they just became like wherever nature was going to float them, that's where they were going to go. The only good news was that they encountered a lot of flying fish on their way that were very eager to jump onto the boat. So that was dinner. So they at least got to eat something. So they start, after months of just being out in the middle of nowhere, they finally saw land and were so excited. But as I said, they had no ability to steer themselves. And so just when they thought they were going to be on land, nature decided, nope, we're going the other way, and back out to sea they went. But eventually they did find land, and they landed in Polynesia on August 7th of 1947. So that means they were at sea on this little craft for just over 4 months. And it was, I'm sure it was a very, very challenging for them. But now Thor Heyerdahl could say with certainty that the Incan people of ancient South America it was possible for them to have made this journey from South America to Polynesia, and could very well have been the start of the population living in Polynesia at that time. This book it's an amazing book. It is filled with such wonderful, vibrant illustrations, which I believe that Deborah Cohen Ray is both the author and the illustrator on this. She fills it with such vibrant, colorful illustrations. I especially love the depictions of the different colors in the sky, the different colors in the sea at various times when it's sunny some days, and other days when it's stormy and the sea is just raging. My absolute favorite thing about this book is that, Thor Heyerdahl himself, not long after completing this expedition, he wrote his own book, which was simply called Kon-Tiki, which was a detailed account of this 4-month journey. And in this picture book, the start of every page contains a quote from Thor Heyerdahl's book. So not only are we introduced to the story of Thor Heyerdahl and his journey on Kon-Tiki, we also get to read some of it in his own words, which I think is really cool to introduce the young ones to just this amazing adventurer. So the book concludes with, it has a biography of Thor Heyerdahl, talking about how he just from the age 5 knew he was just going to be an adventurer, and that's just what he was going to do. He was going to adventure and explore and do things. And then it also talks about the aftermath of this journey and what it meant for all these people that were just all these naysayers that no, this wasn't. And even though he proved that the voyage was possible, it still didn't convince everybody that this is actually how Polynesia was populated, but he at least, proved some of them wrong and said, hey, I said this could be done. I did it. It's done. So yeah, if you have, this is a great book for anyone to read. I think if you're looking for anything about adventure or about fun little aspects of history, but certainly if you have any little budding explorers or adventurers, in your house, share this book with them and show them that, even their dreams, no matter what they have, they can come true if they really put their mind to it.
Excellent. Thank you, Jessica. I did not know that story, so that was all new to me. That's fascinating. Even though, again, part of me was going, this is a terrible idea.
Yeah.
And I don't know how he persuaded 5 other people to go with him. Like, I feel like if any of them had spouses, all of their spouses were out there going, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yes,
But
and he actually did several other expeditions like this later on. After the success of this one, he made other connections between faraway places, between civilizations, and he did another very famous one called the Ra expeditions on a boat called Ra, after the Egyptian sun god, that he actually had to make multiple attempts because the first attempt resulted in the craft being waterlogged and they almost went down in sea. And so, yeah, his whole life was spent doing this kind of stuff. So, those adventurers.
I just feel like you would have to be really okay with sitting with yourself, right? Like if you are on a craft for 4 months in the middle of nowhere, you have to be okay with just sitting there. Like, what are you gonna do?
I mean, hopefully they brought a deck of cards or something.
We would probably go crazy. Like we're not functioned anymore to really be like that. That's what I took away also, is patience and just being able to appreciate just being in the moment.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. Thank you, Jessica.
Absolutely.
And now Jen is going to share her adventurous titles with us.
Okay, I am going to start with Kill the Farm Boy by Kevin Hearn and Delilah S. Dawson. And Kevin Hearn is an author I've talked about before on Literary Libations, but this is a book that he's written with another author. And it's just a very good time. So I'm actually going to read the synopsis because I think that tells it probably more than I can do it in my own words. Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, a hero, the chosen one, was born. And so begins every fairy tale ever told. This is not that tale. There is a chosen one, but he is unlike anyone who's ever been chosen. And there is a faraway kingdom, but you have never been to a magical world quite like the land of Pell. There, a plucky farm boy will find more than he's bargained for on his quest to awaken the sleeping princess in her cursed tower. First, there's a dark lord who wishes for the boy's untimely death, and also very fine cheese. Then there's a bard without a song in her heart with a very adorable and fuzzy tail, an assassin who fears not the night but is terrified of chickens, and a mighty fighter more frightened of her sword than of her chainmail bikini. This journey will lead to sinister umlauts, a trash-talking goat, the dread necromancer Steve, and a strange and wondrous journey to the most peculiar happily ever after that ever once upon a time. This is basically an adventure tale, a quest that's very Monty Python-esque. We have our farm boy who finds out very early in the story from a pixie named Staff, SAT or STAPH, like the infection, which I think is kind of a joke in the book, that he's the chosen one, and he's like, I can't be the chosen one. To persuade him that yes, he is the chosen one, she does some magic and gives a goat the power of speech. And this is the goat Gustav, who basically is just like, I don't want to talk. I want to just be a goat. What are you doing to me? So they go off onto an adventure, and no one is what they are expected to be. The chosen one is a total dolt. The goat is funny. The pixie's kind of, everybody's just not very good at what they do. It's very, very Monty Python-esque. It's very, very funny. It's pokes fun at all of these sort of night quest, adventure, chosen one fairy tales. If you like quest books, if you like sort of adventure books, but you want one that does not take itself seriously, Kill the Farm Boy is 100%. It jokes at sort of all of the things you expect in these stories. These, the chosen one. We all know the chosen one stories, and here's one who's just not adept at all for this. And he is the chosen one. He's going to save the kingdom or whatever. But no, not good. Not good at all. The goat is hilarious, and the goat, kind of ends up being a bigger part of the story than you'd expect. It's just really, really fun and playful. And if you are someone who likes fairy tales or fairy tale retellings, the sort of checks all those boxes while also being extremely irreverent and just kind of silly. A very fun book. There's actually a couple that have came out since. I haven't read the next books in the series. It's The Land of Pell is the series. So I think they kind of take on different people, but Kill the Farm Boy is the first one, and it's it's a lot of fun. It's just a fun little quest that's funny and silly and definitely sort of makes fun of itself as much as it takes itself seriously, which is hard to do, and I think it's a good time.
Well, you had me in the description when they said it had sinister umlauts.
Exactly.
I mean, umlauts are always sinister. Like, you just see that on a word and you're like, ooh, what's going on here? So, I mean, come on.
Is this a YA book?
It's not.
Is it adult? Okay.
It's been a while since I've read it. I don't remember anything particularly, problematic in it. Actually, hold on. I brought a review up from another reviewer, and he actually says recommended age is 13 plus.
Okay.
So it's, technically not a YA. This particular review that I was looking at does mention there's kind of a lot of little tongue-in-cheek references to other fantasy books. So if you have a reader who is pretty well versed in regular fantasy or regular sort of fairy tale-esque kind of things, and they're probably going to get a lot of the references. If there's someone who doesn't really know that world, they're probably not going to get a lot of the sort of jokes. Because like I said, it really makes fun of its genre while being 100% in the genre. But yeah, there's nothing that says that someone like younger couldn't read it. They just might not get all of the references. But fun book. My other title, I'm going very, very classic on this one. One of my personal favorite adventure books is Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. I think we're all probably pretty familiar with young Alice, who falls asleep on, the riverbanks with her sister, and wakes up to find the White Rabbit going into a hole with his pocket watch. And she follows him and, of course, finds herself in Wonderland, where she encounters all sorts of very nonsensical things. She finds the Cheshire Cat, who tells her we're all mad here, one of the greatest books in all of literature. She finds the Mad Hatter and the Dormouse, and she encounters, of course, the Red Queen, who's playing the most absurd game of croquet ever with hedgehog balls and flamingo mallets. I love this book because, I think it's fun anyway. I also like the Disney movie, but the book, so good. But one of the biggest reasons that I love it, and I think it's such a fantastic adventure story, is because it's also given us the basis for so many other sort of little adventure stories. There are a lot of Alice retellings that I really, really like. There's one of my favorites, and I probably should have even just thrown this in here, is, oh gosh, now I forget. It's Frank Better is the author. It's, oh gosh.
It focuses on the Mad Hatter.
Yeah, and I can't think of the title of those books. I think we've actually talked about them in Literary Libations.
I think we have.
There's so many other really, really cool retellings of Alice in Wonderland, but the original is just, it's fun. It's an adventure, absolutely. It's a young girl falling into a weird mythical land, seeing all these crazy things, and then coming back out and going, did I dream that? Did that happen? Was any of that real? What was all of that? But it's also just this great sort of starting off point for so many modern things, that I think if you've never actually read the source Alice in Wonderland, it's absolutely worth it, because it's almost like a series of little kids. She goes into one area and she gets out of it, and then she finds herself into another area, and how are we going to get out of this? And she's doing what most of us do. Hey, I'm having a hard time. Let me eat this thing and see if it makes it better. Only, when I eat, a cookie, I generally don't grow to the size of a house. But Alice is just a fun she's a naive young character who finds herself in this completely bizarre world. And she's got to sort of take her, prim Victorian upbringing and go, okay, how do I get home? How do I get through this? There are no rules here. And it's like the perfect little adventure for any, I think especially kids. Like, this is a great book to read with kids. It's crazy. It's nonsensical, but it's also like pushing your boundaries. And it's okay. It's okay to explore. It's okay to talk to weird caterpillars who are smoking a water pipe. It's cool. I just love Alice in Wonderland. I love the sort of kookiness of it. I love there are no rules, and that's what makes it such a fun book to read. And what makes it such a fun, like all of the, you know, adaptions, is what makes those movies fun. It's what makes the other books that take on that fun, because you can kind of do whatever you want in Wonderland.
And there is a really wonderful, Jim Dale does an audio version. So there's a lot of different audio versions, but there is one that Jim Dale does. So if you're like, I want to listen to it, you can kind of look for the Jim Dale version. And if you're not familiar with Jim Dale, he narrated the Harry Potter books, and he's done lots of other things as well, but he has a voice that you want to listen to. It has the right tone, and he does fabulous character voices as well. So if you're looking for an audio of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland.
And there are so many different versions too. So like you can just straight read the stories. You can find illustrated versions. You can find, you know, I feel like there's a copy of Alice in Wonderland in one form or another for everyone. If you're a visual person, there's movies. If you like cartoons, there's that. If you like live action, there's that. If you want to read it, there's that. If you want an audiobook, there's that. Alice in Wonderland is accessible to everybody, and everyone should read it or watch it or just enjoy it.
Thank you, Jen. And my adventure titles both feature poor souls who didn't really plan to go on the adventure that they end up in. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is The Last by Hannah Jameson. And in this one, John is a history professor who is so excited. He's going to this conference in Switzerland. He's staying in this beautiful hotel. And you know, this should be a lovely time. And then he'll go back home to his family. But, you know, nuclear war breaks out and all the communication lines are cut and cell towers are shut down. Transportation is gone. Communications are gone. Electricity is gone. He has nothing, and he is stuck in this hotel in Switzerland with people he barely knows. When things really get to the point where they're like, we need to start exploring, there's only about 20 people left in the hotel, because those who were close enough locally have already left. Many people left to try and see if they could still get a plane or still get a train to someplace else in Europe to get home to their families. So there's about 20 of them who either have nowhere to go or their families are too far away that they feel like there's no way we're getting out. So they're all stuck in this hotel. They're not sure what's going on in the outside world. The good thing is it's a hotel. There is food there, at least, that they can eat if they can keep it stored well enough. And then their water supply starts dwindling. And so a couple of the men go to explore and find out what's going on with our water, because that had been doing okay. And they discover a body in the cistern. And clearly the body couldn't have been there that long because everything had been going okay for so long. So now you're dealing with this post-apocalyptic world where they're about 10, 15 miles from the closest town, because it's supposed to be sort of a resort. And now they have a body in their cistern, and there's 20 of them in the hotel. And if the body's just there recently, it's probably one of the people you're living with, and you don't know what's going on in the outside world. And so now John is thrown into this horrifying adventure to try and find out who can he trust, what's going on in the rest of the world. And they start sending out little expeditions to see how far they can go, and whether or not those of them in the hotel are going to end up being under threat, because people are going to want the supplies that they have there. And that's the story. So you do find out how the body ended up in the cistern, and there is an ending for John in the book. So like sometimes you read some of these books and they're like, we're just going to leave it up in the air. There is an ending. So if you're one of those people that's like, I want to read a book that has an ending, this one has an ending, and it is a page turner. It is not a particularly character-driven book. If you're looking for thoughtful characters who are, you know, like Kristen described, sitting on boats, thinking about the meaning of life, this isn't what's happening here. John is just trying to survive. So that is what is happening in The Last. It is a great page turner if you're entering the spring or summer and you just want something that you can fly through and it's going to keep the pages turning because you don't know what's going to pop out next. The last is a good one. Which brings me to my next book, which is actually sort of in that same tone. Hide by Kirsten White. And I do have to give a thank you to NetGalley and to Random House for providing me with a digital advanced reader's copy. This title will be released on May 24th. If you want to get yourself on the list, it is already in the Monroe County Library Systems catalog, so we can add you to the list. The description of this one was so much in my wheelhouse, I couldn't resist asking for an advanced reader's copy. So here we go. 14 people are invited to an extreme hide and seek competitive game. And whichever one of them gets out last will win $50,000. And the game is set in this decrepit, abandoned amusement park. I mean, I couldn't resist that. I'm like, it's got everything. It's got abandoned amusement parks. It's got like competitiveness. And you know, like, you look at that cover, this is not going to be like, oh, I got out of the game and I went back home. Like, no, you know, bad things are happening. These people should not have signed up for this game. Like, they should have been suspicious immediately. And as soon as they all get picked up for the game, because they like blindfold them and put them on this bus, and then they go into this town, and immediately things feel weird. Like, the lady who's leading them and getting them prepared for the competition is a woman in her 60s or 70s who's overly made up and wearing a pantsuit. Like, this does not seem like an extreme sports company representative. You know, I think extreme sports, like, it's not going to be Linda, and her name is Linda. Linda is not going to be the person they would send. But at the same time, you get to know the characters, and all of them are sort of in desperate straits in their lives. Where also, oh, if you watch Squid Game, this would be kind of a good one where it's like, these are people who are in desperate straits. Like, they don't have a lot going on in the rest of their lives, and they need the money for a lot of different reasons. So they all go into it, and of course, they find out that, yeah, things are not just like, tag, you're out. It's going to end with, you know, doom, death, and destruction. So as you're reading, you're finding out why this competition would even happen. What is the need behind organizing something like this? What is happening to the folks who are out? And are any of them going to end up surviving? So if that is also your thing, and as soon as I said, like, hey, competition and amusement park, and you were like, yeah, then pick this up and get yourself on the list. If that's not your thing, feel free to move on to something else. But it really was a page turner. Like, I think I read it in 2 or 3 days. So if you need propulsive action, I feel like both The Last and Hide have it, as long as you're okay with your action having some terrifying horror alongside it. So, you know, because there you go. So, but they are both, like I said, they're just really fast reads. And if you need an escape, you know, and that's your thing, then join me and let me know what you think about it. All right, thank you for listening. Thank you to all of you for sharing your adventure reads. And the next time that we get together, we are going to be sharing our favorite DIY books, things that help us get things done or make us want to get things done. So thank you. I hope you have great weeks. Bye.